Hi, Shivani. It's so great to have you. Thank you so much for coming to our show. And welcome to the lead is speaking. You're, in fact, the first women guest that we have on our show. So I'm really glad to and very keen to host you.
Thank you so much.
I'll start with my questions. From a
Sure.
senior security analyst to a deputy group CISO of India's behemoth, Shivani, you have climbed the ladder of your career path, which is truly inspiring. Tell us something about your journey.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Kavita. First of all, thank you for having me on your show. And
Pleasure.
definitely my pleasure to be representing in this forum with you. Yeah, I mean, I've had long but sweet and a good journey, I would say. I have around 20 years of experience in information security, and I think I started to look at infosec when I was in college itself. So I've done my Bachelor of Computer Applications in Hyderabad. So that's where this information security related aspects actually started biting me. I would say, when you learn coding and then you want to do something big. I had developed a portal where in my college we identified if any of our systems are affected with virus. So that's how the infosec journey started, and that's when I got a job in Genpact. I started like a technical call center analyst, Kavita, if I can say that. I used to troubleshoot on the calls, if computer issues are there, and I had a UK client basically. So, and within Genpact, then I moved into Security Operations Center. I would really, really thank, my boss, Sunil Varki, who is who is a known personality, does not need any
Great.
introduction. So, he gave me a chance to work under him, and it was a immense amount of learning what I had under him, and that's how I moved into security operations centers, started to learn about vulnerability assessments and application security, etc., etc. Uh, that's how you kind of start developing your interest, right? I mean, you're experimenting in the initial years of your experience,
Great.
and then you move to a particular domain. Where do you really want to go? Do you want to go technical? Do you want to go governance, risk, and compliance, or do you want to go somewhere else? Or cybersecurity is
Your
so
true
huge.
calling, I may say.
Yeah, exactly, true calling.
Right.
So, I decided to experiment with all the domains. I mean, let's just see how things work within, now I'm monitoring something from security operations center perspective. That means I should be aware of networks, I should be aware of applications, I should be aware of different tools being used at that point of time. Obviously, when I compare it today, there's a huge difference from what we used to see in the SOC that time and what we see today in SOC.
Right.
So yeah, it has been a wonderful journey, I would say. As a woman, if you ask me, did I face any challenges? Not really. I think I've got lucky. All my bosses were really, really kind. They gave me a platform to shine. So, and
Maybe
obviously,
they've seen the potential in you.
yeah, baby, thank you. Yeah, yeah, it all went through really well, and that's how I landed up in Accenture. Accenture was the biggest platform, I think, where I really opened up after my Deloitte and Genpact stint. Accenture used to handle all the client audits, where ISO 27001 for across Accenture, different countries, and all that. So when you talk to different cultures, different countries, their perspective, our perspective, and the client's perspective, right? I mean, somebody who's coming and trusting Accenture for giving services, how do you represent all of those things? I think that part again gave me a lot of exposure on how to handle client audits, right? I mean, how do I ensure that their data is safe, or whatever we are developing for them is safe to be implemented in their environment, etc. From Accenture, I know I moved to KPMG. I've worked with a couple of consulting firms as well, where I had diverse experience with working with a bank, working with the telecom industry, retail, etc. That's where then I decided that I want to come back, be in this industry and not just be on the road all the time. The consulting firms are like that. They actually make you travel a lot, but then there's a lot of learning as well in that firm. My last stint was with TransUnion Sybil, where I was the information security officer, head infosec for India region,
Okay.
and handled everything to do with information security for the biggest bureau in India.
Right.
So I think all of these different uh, uh, stages, what I had in my InfoSec career, have helped me develop some or the other skill within the InfoSec domain, right? Whether it is application security, do I have an understanding? Yes. Vulnerability assessment? Yes. Third-party risk management? Yes. Governance, risk and compliance, regulatory requirements. I mean, I've got exposure to all of these things during my career. So I think that's what when an organization looks at you, they actually look at you for a combination of all of these things, right? I mean, some organizations wants a person to be technically very strong to handle a CISO role, but some organizations really want, you be a queen or of all the platter, and what you offer really to the organization. So I would summarize my journey that way. I think it has been a fantastic learning throughout.
Sure, it's quite a long journey and very interesting. Yeah. Tell us a typical day, how it Mahindra looks like for a CISO, for a deputy CISO.
So I think
so you've just joined, but still, I'm sure very keen to know that.
Yeah, no, I think what I've done in the past, it's been just 3 weeks in Mahindra right now. What I've done is I'm just trying to understand the various business what Mahindra holds today, right? I think my job is right now to have the group companies, come up to the mark with the Corp, which is the M&M, the main group of Mahindra. So right now I'm just trying to be understanding the business, meeting the stakeholders. So I think the initial first quarter is going to go in that manner itself, where I come from a strong finance background, right? I've worked with banks, I've worked with the credit bureau. I've been always working in the tight regulatory environment. Now I'm a little outside of the regulatory requirements, right? I mean, while data privacy now is heavily on each of this outside the M&M industry, I would say. So I'm just trying to understand the business so that I can stitch the controls properly. It's not like one thing will fit everything, right? I mean, Club Mahindra is different, reality is different, whatever is different, Agri is different. So we'll have to see how we can get them on the same platform, or stitch maybe customized controls for each of these businesses. So for that, obviously, I will need to understand the business more than moving in one direction. So that's how I would say my days are going right now in Mahindra.
So a lot of learning and unlearning, I may say.
A lot of learning. Unlearning, I think unlearning is important in this in this period right now, before I start putting my perspective or my thought process. Keeping everything what I've done in the past aside, and just trying to understand what the expectations are from me, from individual stakeholders or the management I'm going to work along with. So I'm excited. Let's see how it goes. And
I'm sure it'll be great, like your previous endeavors.
Yeah.
So now my next question, Shivani, is what are the emerging areas you see in cybersecurity today?
So I think it is really important, that we speak about different topics when it comes to emerging technologies. I know a lot of people will say AI these days. Everyone wants to talk about artificial intelligence. But what I would really emphasis on, Kavita, is, we shouldn't forget the basics, right? I mean, emerging technologies are definitely going to be around, but did we have our foundations right? I mean, zero trust, we spoke about it so much. Now it's kind of become like a BAU, but not all organizations have still adopted that technology. Right? I mean, how much is good is something which all of us have to decide on. I think for me, zero trust was something which was really, really interesting, that will change when a lot of organizations start accepting that technology, basically. There's, we've always spoken about shift left, right? But have we really moved to the left? Even, in a part of DevSecOps, if I have to talk, right? have we really done our part, that today we are confident that yes, we have done certain things
Right.
which are right in a shift left kind of an environment.
Right.
That's again, I would definitely call it as a emerging technology too. Then I think one thing which all of the CISOs may be dreadful about are the ransomware attacks.
Yes.
Right, and more than the attack, I think it is about defense and recovery.
Right.
So these are the things which maybe if we have a good foundation of these aspects, then we could look at the next level, right? I mean, artificial or machine learning and etc. etc. So
it's like easy to get new buzzwords, but how we have fared well in the past, on the previous things,
exactly.
Still a big question, right?
Exactly.
Like, yeah,
absolutely.
We all talk about zero trust, but I think everybody talks about it, but the implementation again is like a big question mark.
It's a mammoth, right? I mean, every organization is different. Every organization's perspective when it comes to zero trust is different.
Right.
For me, zero trust would be something which I have to implement for anyone connecting from outside, right? From remote locations. Or now the perspective for me from Mahindra perspective is again different. So
Absolutely.
I have to see how zero trust is really implemented in Mahindra today
compared
to what I had in my previous organizations. I mean, those were all finance industries. How did I control all that access?
Right.
So that's why, I mean, that's where I was saying that I have to stitch customized controls as per which industry you are in.
Absolutely, absolutely. Now, as per the reports, insider threats reportedly the primary cause for 60% of the data breaches. What measures or steps CISO should take to control this trend?
If I have to really talk about insider threats, I think there are two things, a technical way and a non-technical way you have to handle this. I mean, technically, you can't completely depend on, say, user behavior analysis tools, what you have. But yes, those are important. They have to be there. But even if I have that, and if I'm monitoring those UEBA kind of tools what we have in the environment today, there's so many vendors who are offering so many user access tools, but are they really using them at par, right? Are the capabilities being offered, do I really need all of them in my environment, right? My use cases, what I'm trying to use tools, they have to be a little customized again. It can't be like, oh, they gave me 100 use cases as a part of tool and I'm using all the 100. I mean, then I'm like overkilling the SOC team over here or whoever is monitoring that particular tool. So it will be a combination of tools, and of course there are processes attached to it. So I would strongly recommend, that as a CISO, I would definitely want to work with the HR department and the legal department in this case. Right? I mean, we should have strong governance pillar as well. So if I notice something from a user perspective, what disciplinary actions am I supposed to take against that employee or contractor or whoever it is? Am I, if I'm finding it suspicious, how can I report? Who to include at what point? The escalation matrices, etc., from legal perspective. So, for example, it's a third-party contractor who's working in my environment, and I see something suspicious. Then, what process do I follow from legal agreement perspective? Right? Can I sue that particular third-party vendor? Can I cut his services to the company today? Can I blacklist the person and blacklist the company? There are a lot of things which we have to decide as a CISO, so that these kind of things don't repeat in the environment, right? And obviously, for me to do those governance side of processes, I will need something at the tool level as well. Right. And I think the biggest, the top layer, more on technical and non-technical, would be our awareness. Right? So security related awareness. What are you allowed to do? What are you not allowed to do? Those kind of conversations. I think, I said this before as well. Emails and videos have become, the past. Nobody is interested. I mean, we send a lot of emails, where do's and don'ts and all of that. But how many are actually reading those?
Reading it, right?
And how many of them are really interested to know what we really want from you.
Right.
We all understand InfoSec is everyone's responsibility, but then are you really able to do justice by doing that? So I would prefer, some ideas where I would like to do some role, for example, get an external speaker to come and talk about it.
Right.
Sometimes these things register in the minds quicker than an insider person, coming and telling.
It looks like just another mail.
Exactly. So I would prefer, keeping this very dynamic, where from user awareness perspective, we keep trying something new every time. So users are not like, oh, it's another mail from information security.
Exactly.
So
how did you manage this in your previous, like you were working for TransUnion?
Yeah.
So how did you ensure what measures? And I think more of engagement. Correct me if I'm wrong. Some more. Yeah,
Absolutely.
we have to move beyond the emails, I guess.
Exactly. No, I'm like, we used to do a lot of emails as well, because that's something which is a requirement. We have to show it to the auditors and engagements, whatever we've done with the users on the floor. But more above that, we used to have these open conversations, right? Just, on a coffee table during the lunch time, right? Just a small road show, something displayed on the TV, in the cafeteria. Or you just randomly go and make what my mantra would be is, Kavita, just make the person comfortable to come and talk to you. Right. I mean, that trust when you have with a user who's working along with you on the next desk, he or she should be comfortable to come and just tell you, what, Shivani, this is what happened. I don't know what to do. So if you make that relation, I think a lot of it can be handled, is what I feel.
It's more about today people management than the technical, right? So again, irrespective of AI, whatever comes into picture, the human relationship and engagement is very integral to this profile, right?
Absolutely.
So how much time CISO also spend in doing these people management skills, trainings, or workshops? Is also a part of the overall, profile today.
I think it's by default, Kavita. If we are not doing this, then we wouldn't be visible in the environment or in the organization, I would say. For me, this is way important. At least when it comes to me personally, I feel that I should spend more time, conversing with people. So I used to joke around, in my previous organizations that my desk is InfoSec help desk.
That's a good one.
So any issues, like you have an IT problem, there's IT help desk, and anything to do with InfoSec, here is the help desk. So you please come, ask, let's resolve your things or get you a solution. How to address anything that you have.
That's a very important point that you brought it, right? It's I think most of the CISOs are, I'm not too sure how many are doing it, but I think they all talk about it, that, human, intervention has to be done. Some kind of, the bonding has to be done. But as you mentioned, that is one of the practices they should look at incorporating.
True. Absolutely.
So coming to my next question, what are the top security concerns in organizations today? Ransomware, data exfiltration, compromised identity, unauthorized access, or something beyond this, if you can highlight that.
All of the points that you just mentioned, Kavita, are all on top of everyone's minds, right? I mean, it all starts from the identity, and it starts from there, and there's a lateral movement. That's how ransomware attacks will happen, or data exfiltration after the ransomware attack.
Right.
And it's all connected, right? So that's why I brought, when we were talking about the earlier question, foundation is very important. We shouldn't be forgetting basics. Basics like, do I have a proper security inline architecture in place, right? Do I have my foundation like services like the user access management, which is the biggest and the most important. We keep talking about, newer things, what are happening, but then we are not doing the user access, which is the crux of everything, properly, right? I do see a lot of improvement areas in user access management, or say, for example, Firewalls. How are you managing your firewalls? You have all fancy technologies in place, but then are you really using to their fullest capacity? Am I really having the visibility across my environment? Do I know if someone connects something in my network, and I do know that, okay, there's somebody sitting somewhere in that corner of my office and doing something, right? My assets, do I know where my assets are lying? So I think if we have these kind of visibility, the foundation visibility with us, it really helps us in minimizing the impact when something happens, right? So I would say these things, when it comes to addressing addressing the incident, if something happens, or when you have visibility, you are confident enough, then obviously something happens, the impact is going to be less.
Absolutely. So the answer lies in the basics actually.
Exactly.
Just follow the basics, and I think you're able to manage anything.
Exactly. Patch management, right? I mean, patch management is such a big concern with every other company today. You're not hearing this for the first time. I mean, this is there, I don't know, ages, even before we all entered into this industry.
It was right.
Obviously, the amount of the percentage has increased rapidly. We might not have really seen, when I was in Genpact, I used to support the UK client, like I said, and hardly never, we used to talk about vulnerability, patching, and all that. I used to make dashboards, hardly 50 line items in the dashboard, right? Where 50 patches. Today, it's not the case. Today, we have tons and tons of patches. So I know the percentage has increased, but are we doing the basic, again, patching? How are we prioritizing the patching, the perimeter patching first? Do we have protection at the perimeter patching, etc., etc.? So I think everything comes back to basics, I would say. If that is strong, I'll feel confident, I would say.
No, absolutely, you're right. I think that women instinct is always there, right?
Yes,
we always, stick to the basics first, and then we move on. Probably that may be one of the core things. Yeah. How do you see changing trend in allocation of budget for cybersecurity in the last couple of years? What are the top 3 budget spending in cybersecurity for organizations today?
From budgets, I'll tell you, since I've worked in consulting firms, I've seen a lot of, banks where I worked, or, I've worked in a telecom based industry as well for a few months. And it's like, you get a notch of what's happening, if I'm working with the telecom industry, how the budgets are allocated, right? When you are going and negotiating for your consulting fees as well, right? So you come to know that how much focus do they have for InfoSec as such? Are they willing to spend what we are asking them, right? And a lot of these companies, we've made like roadmaps. One of the big things what our consulting firms do, right? They make a roadmap where low-hanging fruit and then mid-term, long-term roadmaps are given to the different industries what we work with. And now comes the real discussion, right? I mean, where roadmaps are given. What are we doing with that roadmaps? Are we like ready to churn everything what we have and align budgets to this particular project just because it's a consulting firm who's identified gaps, and then we have to work on these things and show it to the world that we're good. So I think a lot has changed. Earlier the focus used to be always bare minimum things, right? I mean, small things like awareness, small things like, do I have a tool to scan the environment? Am I on the budget? Now, what I see is it's drastically changed because the threat landscape has changed. There are newer technologies. There are like different tools which are being offered. What is my requirement? I think when it comes to budget, it's always about what does my organization need. I don't need to go and touch every other tool and ask for budget. But what I need, am I giving that right picture to the management? Saying, this is the bare minimum thing. I know this is a 3-year roadmap. Right now, for this year, this is what I need. Next year, this is what I need. After that, this is what I need. So I think when you are clear in your asks, what you really need and what for, and you are confident that you're going to give ROIs, right, return on investments, because security is always a cost center. It is not a profit center. So you have to justify what your needs are,
Right.
And then tell them that, okay, these are the things what's going to happen once I have A, B, C, D installed. Right? This is how the output will look like, and this is how I'm decreasing whatever in my environment. So I see a lot of positive approach these days with by the CISOs as well, and the management is understanding. Earlier, if you remember, we used to scare, that company went through this company went through. We don't want to be in that bucket, and we don't want to get through any attack like this.
Right.
So those conversations have gone 100%. I mean, everybody knows what's happening outside. It's open, but how are you doing it? What kind of budgets do you need for your organization? I think that has changed, and I think we are getting budgets. Every industry is different again. Finance industry, because they have regulatory commitments. They have to imply or comply with the regulatory requirements. I think I don't want to say it, but then they might do they do have like less struggle when you ask it. But when you come to outside finance industry, where things like telecom or anywhere, while where there is regulatory things, I think it is quite okay. But non-regulatory environments, I think it's different. So it's good. I mean, we've come a long way. People now understand what is security. We don't have to sing a song every time they give me, or this is how it is or whatever. But I think most of the budgets these days are going in cloud, cloud security, where everybody wants to use the cloud, right? I mean, I think it's a gone story any which ways, the cloud thing. But are we securing the cloud properly? Again, back to basics. So, that one, then I think privacy is going to be eating a lot of time. Once it is announced and, it's implied, I think privacy will need a lot of budgets across the organizations, whichever industry you are in. If you're working with consumer data, then it's applicable. Zero trust, we spoke a lot about it. Obviously, that will require a lot of budget, and I think I do have a feeling that a lot of amount is going in that, because legacy environments and newer environments within the same organization have to be protected. So I would think of these three items, if you ask me.
Spending will be maximum, spending will go. Okay. Yes. And how do you approach risk management and threat assessment within your organization? I may say in the past, if I may ask you, or how do CISO should do it actually? Yeah.
I think when it comes to risk management and threat assessment, right, I think approaches remain really mundane. I mean, we have the same old frameworks, ISO and NIST and COSO and COBIT, and but everything dwells down to the same thing, right? I mean, how are you? It's all these frameworks. Maybe the perspective, end goal is the same. Just that the approach is different. So when it comes to risk management, obviously, how much is good, or how much is bad, or am I covered? Do I have my compensatory controls? ABCD, that's how you would actually layer it. I would box it basically and keep it in that different layers. Like we all talk about 3-tier architectures in our common, BAU day-to-day languages. So I think risk assessment will fall under that 3-tier architecture. How much am I to expose? How much am I willing? What's my risk appetite? And how much am I willing to? It's okay. I can still manage this the way it is, right? It all depends on organization to organization. What kind of appetite do I have in that organization, and how much? And a lot of organizations actually believe in cyber insurance as well. where if you ask me, I'm not a true believer in, of course, everybody needs to have a cyber insurance, but depending on cyber insurance is not the right thing to do. So, risks, how you want to manage it within your organization, that will be better to be done internally rather than having a third party come and tell you one, two, three, right? So you know your things better. You know where to put a full stop. You know where to let it go. And only in case of something you really want an insurance company to come in and pitch in.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you're not good. You don't promote cyber insurance, so to speak. You're not strong believer in it.
Yeah, not really promote, but they are like when risk transfer situation, when we talk about, right? I think cyber insurance is very important. I am not not saying we shouldn't have one, but can we make our controls more stronger, that and avoid these things?
Right.
In that, let's not be in that situation. And you again, it's like, I know exactly where to focus. I know exactly where my assets are, and it's very difficult. Not everybody will agree, but there is a way to get into those details, and that's how at least I believe in doing my work. And from threat assessment perspective, I think a lot of these things have been done when we end up having a new tool, right, in the environment. You do an assessment on how is this particular tool going to impact threat analysis. When I'm launching any product, then what's the kind of threat assessment am I supposed to do in that product? Is it safe? Can I expose it publicly or not? So again, it all depends on organization, the business requirements, and your internal InfoSec team. So I would use again a lot of different frameworks for even threat assessment. A lot of fancy words actually are there for threat assessment, but end of the day, you're doing the same, in a different way, but you're doing threat actor impact or threat actor analysis and all that. If I expose this product on the internet, am I really going to get what kind of security controls have I already put in? Am I missing anything, right? All those assessments can be done over and above what you really do within your organization.
So coming to my next question, Shivani, in the current scenario, do organizations treat cybersecurity as a business or IT responsibility? How has the CISO's role evolved or changed, if I may say, in response to the increasing threat, especially in the last 2 to 3 years?
I think CISO's role has not, it's no more like exactly what it used to be like 10 years ago, right? They have to be now a business enabler. They are given a seat at the board. They are the risk assessors. They work very closely with the IT. They work really well on budgets, right? I mean, it's like an all-rounder job.
Right.
It's not like I'm only a CISO, I'm going to sit in one room and then, do things. No more a thing like that. So I think it's gone are those days when people say it is IT responsibility or it is InfoSec's responsibility. Everybody understands now the importance of InfoSec, right from the top level, where the CEO of the organization or the CIO or the CEO, everybody is so supportive. I mean, it's not like I have to go and tell a story to do something. Their responsibilities. So, but again, as a CISO, I would say we will have to play a very balanced role. While we don't want to be called as a gateway where everything gets stopped, right? We want to be called as a gateway where things are made secure and then moved to the production environment or whatever the business wants to call it. So rather than falling later, we want to be safer first and then let them go. So my conversations have always been, let's not think of how long is this process. Let's think of how secure are we doing it. right?
Right.
And is the business able to understand your language? And they will understand your language only when you understand business's language.
Absolutely.
Right?
Yeah.
So
Right.
when you start converting numbers, when you start
Mhm.
converting things for them, like, you know, from security perspective, 1, 2, 3 things are very important. And
Right.
it's not like 10 things in my policy, all the 10 are required that time, right? How are you helping the business? What's my priority? I'll say 1, 2, 3 things have to be done immediately. 4, 5, 6 could be, you know, in a quarter. 7, 8, 9 could be in a month or something like that. If I give a roadmap, even the business will be able to understand the perspective,
Right.
rather than stopping them at the first place and say no, do everything and then you go. Until then there is no business. That's not I don't believe in that language at all. So, and it's always like a, you know, balance between the business, the IT, infosec. All of us are actually working for the same organization.
Right. Absolutely. You can't work in silos, and somewhere you
Exactly.
have to align your with business goals. Then only, yes.
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct.
So a lot has changed. They have to be much more flexible and much more understanding.
We should know what lines are we crossing. We should know how much can we cross those, and how much can I let the other person cross. So if you're making
Right.
that balance between these three aspects, I think you're good. I mean, it's not that complicated. Not uh, let's not show it as if, you know, oh my god, this is like, oh god.
Right. Absolutely. Now, what's your take on the third-party risk management, Shivani, or especially the third-party risk management programs, and
Right.
how can business balance the advantages of using AI in the
Right.
cybersecurity strategies with the risk posed by AI enhancing capabilities or cyber threats? I may say, not capabilities. Sorry.
I think third party risk management is a very touchy topic, Kavita, and has been a very close to my heart kind of a topic,
Okay.
right? I've done a lot of third party risk management, you know, set up a process and, you know, monitoring processes and all of that. It takes time for everyone to understand the perspective you're coming from.
Right.
So, what I used to tell is whenever you think of something, right, as a business, as a product owner, as a someone in an HR department or in a legal department, if you
Right.
think of a service that needs to be outsourced, think of TPRM. In that, okay? I
Right.
don't want you to evaluate everything, you know, freeze the person, the company, and then come to InfoSec saying, now you approve. Because we are not able to find any other vendor.
Right.
This is it. So I don't want to be in that situation. So the education, again, the awareness which we have, like, you think of a third party to get a service or give a service, think of InfoSec in parallel. Like you think of legal agreements to be done.
To be part of the decision making, kind of
Exactly.
involve them in the decision. Yeah.
So, and then I think onboarding is just the simplest part. The ongoing monitoring and ensuring that they are up to the mark. You know, how much time am I spending reviewing their InfoSec posture? You know, and you cannot, again, you cannot have all the third parties being scaled with one measurement.
Right.
Every third party is different. So there has to be tiering basically in third party. Now, if we bring up AI in that, now if a vendor is offering something which is AI built and, you know, fancy stuff like that, how am I getting assurance on whatever they have built is InfoSec safe, right, or certified, or how am I monitoring those aspects? So I think, again, it comes to what kind of tools do you have in your environment which are monitoring third parties as well. I mean, you do monitoring for your URLs. Why not you do the same monitoring for your third parties, their website, right? Just to see if there has been anything in the news, or just to see if they have any critical vulnerability which will harm us, or, you know, something which is connected. So TPRM program, basically I would divide that into onboarding, enablement, and monitoring, and then continuously ascertain whether they're doing the right thing and for whatever services they are offering us, or we are taking. You know, uh, so I would tier them and then customize those controls as per the tiering. Maybe the critical vendors, I will bucket them in a different
Right.
list itself and say these are mandatory. We will have to do these assessments. Anything which has to be highlighted to the management, then it has to be an immediate one. You can't hold on to it if it's a critical vulnerability there.
Right.
And then I would not focus so much on a tier 4 vendor where I really do not have anything to worry about, right? So these two are like extreme situations, I would say.
So
that's
prioritizing.
Exactly, prioritizing and seeing how am I able to concentrate. That way I'm not wasting time, right? As a POSEC person, I know where to go and monitor. I need to go and pinpoint things at what point. So my third party risk management process was, I think I feel happy, I feel proud that I've done a good job in TPRM. And there are multiple tools also which actually help you. I'm sure you would have heard about RiskRecon or or UpGuard, for example.
UpGuard, yes.
Yeah, so these guys help us in doing the vendor risk as well. They have like something goes down there, or they find some critical vulnerability. There are alerts which are being sent to the organization and all that. So I think these things help in overall TPRM processes.
Great. But there's a lack of cybersecurity professions today. This is my favorite question, actually. Yeah. especially if we talk about women. How do we change and get more women in industry?
Yeah, no, I think we should. There's a lot of work going on already. I think a lot of people are looking at having the cybersecurity as a curriculum in the university. Right? I think more we should do much like an awareness program. I think that education is very important. We can do those things. We should go to the colleges, educate them. What they are to. How this will change the perspective of their mindset.
Right? Absolutely.
How can we bring in from how can we bring them from left to right, basically?
Right. Yes.
These are the things that you could do, and there are some people who are like they have that kida, if I say. So you should concentrate on these guys because I feel that they will have a lot of they will have a good future in.
Right. Okay.
I feel these people will be good for like vulnerability assessment or red teaming exercises and all that. If they that word is something you look for. I also look for these people. When I have some internship programs, right?
Right. Yes.
So that's another way of inviting these guys into this profession. So when I take interviews or when I take internship interviews and I go to colleges and all that, I look for some people who are specifically for this criteria.
Right.
And most of the girls, I think most of the women, I would say they want like GRC kind of a thing, right? Clients. So I keep telling them it's not like women are meant for GRC. Women can be technical too. So if you have if you want to explore, I wouldn't say just go and do that. But if you want to explore, this is also something which you can explore. You don't have to be always at the GRC side. So I think these college awareness, the curriculum and internship programs, and of course internal job postings, right, within the organization.
Right. Yeah.
People will come and approach you, saying, Shivani, is there an opening in your team? I would want to.
Right.
You into those conversations. I mean, these guys can be from different industries, could be from operations, could be from products. But how you want to get them in InfoSec, giving them a career path, and also bringing them into a newer kind of a domain.
Right. Absolutely.
So their perspective will also help a lot in InfoSec, because if I'm thinking from a product side, right, product person is going to give me a perspective from his overall experience.
Yes. Right. Absolutely.
Then you pitch the infosec along with that perspective.
Correct.
Having diverse backgrounds also is very
Right.
helpful.
That's really interesting. That's
Yeah.
really, really interesting. And today there is a kind of a, I must say, there's a lot of requirement for the InfoSec teams, right? For the employee, the team. So how are you managing that, Shivani? Like, do you get the right kind of talent with the skills? Or it's
So
like,
I would say, Kavita, I don't look at certification. I mean, it's important. I'm not saying
like,
no.
yeah,
Certifications are important, but firstly, I would look for a person who has passion
right.
for the job, right? What are they getting into? They should be passionate about learning things.
Right.
They should have patience, right?
Yes.
Things might come slow, things might come really fast. They should be able to adapt to those situations. Change management. We'll talk about change management so much. So I see for these qualities first, right? Not necessarily how much experience do they have in cracking
Right.
from InfoSec perspective or application security perspective. Of course, those niche skills are definitely required. But the earlier things what I said, like passion, the learning side of it, and etc. I look for those things, and then when we look at it from a different perspective, that perspective, it is easy to get talent, I would say.
Right.
And then it all depends on you, how you want to nurture them and bring them up to speed. So this could be like an experiment for juniors, right? But there would be something where want somebody to just come in and run the show for you. And at the time you will definitely need a proper skill set person. Right? It kind of gets little difficult to find exactly. I mean, you can't expect, if I'm writing a JD which has 100 lines and you have all the 100 lines matching with one person. That's not going to happen.
Right.
How much are you going to, what's your expectation like? How much are you willing to teach this person? If 60% has matched and 40% has not matched, then that 40 is something which is your responsibility to ensure. If you find that person is willing to learn and grow, right? Then that is the balance as a CISO we all have to play. I mean, you're not going to be a god. सर्वगुण संपन्न ऐसे नहीं होता है.
Very well said. Great to know, and I'm so happy that you look so. The CISO is always stressed. That's a kind of notion that is being built today. Sorry, I'm not trying to generalize or something. That's how it is. Like every CISO, like you read the content, you read everything around it is like they're stressed, they're leaving, quitting their jobs, and they're looking for different career paths and all that stuff. So glad to meet you, and you look very very happy, touchwood, and all relaxed and and beaming with energy. So how do you manage and how do you strike the balance? Because at the end of the day, you're a lady also. Sorry, so I just want to understand, being a woman at the same time, doing such a quite a demanding profile you are in, and then work. How do you manage this work-life balance? How do you do that?
I think when it comes to work-life balance, Kavita, I believe in two things. I think many things, but two things are very important. You have to sometimes cut yourself, right, from the world. You need your. I believe in time a lot, so I spend my me time in different ways. Either I don't do anything, just sit and do nothing, or I am fond of reading books. So I read a lot of these Harvard management books, right? That you learn about emotional intelligence and team and change management. Quite a big array of topics. What I like to literally read and learn and use a few on myself and also the people I am working with. So when I come back home after work, obviously I have a 10-year-old son, so he has a lot of questions, and he asks me that how was your day and what did you do, and now that he's been listening to InfoSec so much, he has questions on InfoSec too.
Interesting. So you're grooming a talent at home also.
Yeah, exactly. That's what is happening. But last 6 months or something, he's like, I don't want to become information security officer like you. I'm like, okay, fine. That's totally cool. It's fine.
I know. That's interesting.
So I think indulging yourself, cutting yourself for a while, giving yourself some self time. Do what you like. One. Second is you need to know prioritization is very important, right?
Right.
Everything cannot be important and everything cannot be urgent.
Right.
So I think that knack where all of us have, like, yeah, this is important. I know what needs to be done today and what can wait for tomorrow or day after.
Right.
That is very clear in my mind.
Okay.
Third is family support, of course. You do need a family support, and the help. I think maids are a big part.
I totally agree.
Maids are a big part.
They're enablers, actually.
Exactly. And when it comes to profession, right, at office, I would say you should believe in delegating and not doing everything by yourself. Right? I know it's kind of difficult for everyone to do that. Everybody would want to do, this is something which I can do. I want to do this, or I don't want to give this to someone. I mean, I don't know if they'll do a good job. I think that trust needs to be developed and start delegating those things, and that's when you will have some space to do something else.
Absolutely.
Right? That's again like balancing your day, where you know the team member is going to do a good job.
Right.
Then why are you not just giving it?
Right.
So that's one thing which I would say. And then obviously self-care is also very important.
Right.
They say me time and self-care play a big part. Exercising, do what you like.
Okay.
Maintaining healthy well-being is also very important.
Yes.
Right? Otherwise, you will not understand what's going on. Maybe
Correct.
that stress then will start creeping in. So I think maintaining all of these things will definitely help, and that's what I believe. At least I do that. That's helped me a lot, Kavita. I think when you have that balanced kind of a nature, right?
Yes.
People will be you're like more approachable.
Right.
People talk, and then you also know where to stop. So I think all that has worked well for me. Yeah.
But that's really great, because it's quite challenging for women, especially. Like, there are days when you are like, there are too many things to do, and how do you strike that balance, and everything goes haywire. So you feel like, oh, why are you doing everything and all that stuff? But being in such a demanding and challenging profile, at the same time, maintaining that Zen kind of balance, that's amazing. And you touch wood, you look also very happy, and that's happiness.
Thank you.
That's really, I wish all that it continues like this.
Yes,
And more and more people can, women especially, can be in this industry, because it's like really great to speak to you today. It was indeed such a informative, kind of interview that we had, and a great meeting. And I'm really looking forward to many more, and for various other topics, actually. Thank you so much. It was a pleasure having you.
Thank you.
Thank you.